Good morning, everyone.
Good evening from India. I'm sure that we all get organized for today's session, and I see Clayton, I see Mahu, I see Philip. You all are there, and let us start the session in another 1 minute. That should be okay overall. Yeah, absolutely. We'll just wait for another 60 seconds. I'm sorry, right? Yeah. Once again, good evening. It's nice to see all the learners today on this meeting. What I'll quickly do is let me check, two things. I'm audible to all, so you can just say hi to me. Yeah, absolutely great. Uh, what we'll do is the next, 120 minutes, 130 minutes, we would be looking at, what is the pilot study and what is the relevance of, pilot study as far as research is concerned. Before that, let me give a quick, brief introduction of mine. My name is Dr. Bagali. I'm a professor. I teach for PG students. I teach for advanced, PhD students. We call in India as PhD program, where there we call it as DBA program. I have almost 25 plus years of experience teaching PG students, wide varieties of subject I have taught, education management, research, methodology, publication, these are the few subjects that I take for students. I also have a couple of research papers being published in Asian journals and across international journals. Uh, my specialization is how do we really design a better research proposal. How do we design our research methodology, our research approach, or our research framework. So with this context, let us spend today's workshop on trying to understand how best the pilot study has to be conducted and what are the various methodology, or what are the various frameworks that we need to adopt so that we get the maximum outcome or the output when we go for data collection. It is nice to see you all. And before we really are into our workshop, let me quickly have 1 minute of introduction from all those who have joined for today's meeting. Let me start with Philip Brownie, in case Philip Brownie is listening to me out there. Yeah.
Yes. My name is Philip Brown. I'm from Ontario, Canada. Essentially, I have a history primarily in leadership in the public sector, and I'm currently instructing in a crisis management and leadership within the Canadian Police College.
Oh, really? Nice to see that. Okay. Welcome, Philip, for this. Let us see, how your experience, would enrich, today's workshop out there, right? Yeah. Clayton Cummings is there. I'm sure that, yeah, hi.
Yep. Hi. I'm sitting at 9 p.m. in Singapore right now. I am originally from South Africa, but have been based here in Singapore for 10 years. I'm working at an international school. My background is actually in educational psychology. And so my interest really lies in the bridge between education and psychology. So that's my area of interest.
Absolutely great, Clayton, because I'm also a psychology, I did my BA in psychology. I had my organizational psychology, which we call it as applied psychology. Okay, the paper title, for us was, called as applied psychology. Yeah, in a minor level, it is called as applied psychology, but when you use it for a major, it is called as organizational behavior. Okay, we just call it as OB out there, right? Yeah. Mahupal should be there. Yeah, absolutely.
Hello, I'm Mahua. I am based in Dubai. I've been here for over 30 years, and my education career spans over 25 years. I currently teach at an IB World School, and I'm a senior leader as well. I
Oh,
teach the IB Geography and IB Global Politics, as well as Theory of Knowledge. Uh, and My research interest is the impact of teacher professional development on classroom practice and student outcomes.
absolutely great. Okay, classroom practices. I'm just taking a few notes, so that once in the workshop, this should help us and students, outcome. In India, we call the same, students outcome have, graduate, outcomes, right? Yeah, absolutely. We just call this that, right? Okay, nice to see you all. And when you look at your research, when you look at, actual data collection, that you go there. One of the aspect that you need to understand is what are the various challenges that we usually face, or what are the various issues that we face when we go for an actual data collection or actual study. So to avoid all this, like we say that prevention is better than cure. Pilot study would help you to understand what are those various challenges that we need to look at, and how do we really tackle them, or how do we really face them. So what pattern or framework I'll do is, I have a presentation on that. So we should be able to look at the presentation, followed by our discussion on how best pilot study can be structured, how best pilot study can be modeled, so that our actual data collection or actual study would be very fruitful. So just give me 1 minute time, so that let me share my presentation to all. Yeah, 1 second. Can someone say that the presentation is visible to you all, the full screen?
Yes.
Thank you very much. Now, pilot study obviously is a smaller version of a bigger study, that we plan. Pilot study, for various reasons, that we take. We undertake, pilot study to understand whether my actual study, what I have planned, is in line with my outcomes, in line with my objectives, is line with my research questions. Pilot studies also undertaken to understand what would be my further or future challenges that I might face when I go for my actual study. Okay, I mean, you try to test in a smaller water, you try to test in a smaller playground, you try to test in a smaller school, or you try to test in a smaller pond, so that once you go to a bigger aspect, when you go to a bigger data collection, you will not have all these challenges. The other objective why we need to take pilot study is to understand, am I my study is relevant, whatever I'm trying to export, okay, whatever I'm trying to explore, discover, is this relevant study, or should I restructure, should I rework, should I relook at my entire framework when I go for an actual study? Because I know everyone knows that time, money, resources are very crucial when you go for an actual study or actual data collection, right? So in pilot study, you try to test, am I in the right direction? So let us look at this essential steps for planning and testing your research methods through a pilot study. So when you look at pilot study, obviously the question arises is what is this pilot study, or why is this pilot study? What exactly we mean by pilot study, and why we need to take this pilot study? Obviously we spoke that it is essential because prevention is better than cure. You try to test all that what has been planned for a actual study. There are 4 points you need to look at why a pilot study is required. First is, the purpose of a pilot study is to test the feasibility. The purpose of the pilot study is to test the relevance of your study. I mean, research always looks at the relevance, the contemporary aspect of what is that you are trying to research questions, trying to answer these research questions. So in pilot study, say you go with 1 or 2 research questions out there, like let me frame one research question for Clayton. Clayton is international school, and he is into educational psychology. So one such research question that Clinton wants to look at is the impact of say social media on teenagers. Okay, say for example, psychologically, he wants to understand what is the impact of social media on teenagers. Is it positive? Is it negative? Is it advantage? Is it disadvantage? Obviously, everyone knows that the more the social media, the more is the knowledge, the more is understanding. But is it really a practical question, or is it really a practical outcome out there? So when you're going for your actual study with this research questions. I'm just giving a hypothetical understanding, why, pilot study, has to be taken. Okay. So he teaches in international school, and he is an educational psychologist, and he wished to understand the behavioral aspect, of students when they are exposed, to social media. So I want to understand, is this, a feasible research question? Is this a relevant, research question? So when I want to look at 500 students, I better understand, this research question by testing, with 10 or 12 students, whether my research question, my research understanding, my research, framework is appropriate to understand the social media and its effect on the behavioral, aspect, of the students. So pilot study will give you the feasibility of understanding this. It also will help you to understand the time management. Obviously, for 10 students, if say, Clinton, takes, say for example, I'm just giving a hypothetical example out there. If Clint, wants to look at this social media, and for one student, if he's using say 30 minutes, then if he wants to do a 500 sample of say 10 schools across Singapore, or any of the other continent out there. Now pilot study would help you, to have your time management. Pilot study will help you for one student 30 minutes into 500, or should I commit for 400 because of time, or should I commit for 300 or 200, the quality students 200, or the quantity way of 400. All these etiquettes, all these minute time management or minute planning that you can do in an actual study when you look at your pilot study. So pilot study would also help to understand the cost that is involved. Cost in terms of finance cost, cost in terms of time cost, cost in terms of social cost. Because when you do your research work, you tend to meet students, you tend to meet principal, you tend to meet head, you tend to meet the principal of the school out there when you're doing your data collection. And there is a cost that is involved there, social cost, social time, economic cost, financial cost. So all this would be answered when you go to a pilot study. And obviously, what is the risk before full scale research begins? When we say risk, risk in terms of what would be my time, what would be my interaction, what would be the respondent or the sample time, and the challenges that we would be facing. Challenges in terms of responses, challenges in terms of time, challenges in terms of discussion, challenges in terms of other aspect, as far as the data collection or the sample or the respondent is concerned. So when you look at pilot study, what is pilot study? Pilot study will give you a groundwork. It will give you a picture, a bigger picture of your relevance, bigger picture of your time, and bigger picture of your cost and risk that is involved when you go to a full scale research. The second thing is, obviously, now you wish to do your research in school management, or like, I mean, you want to do, say, storytelling. What is the effectiveness of storytelling, in say, students' outcome? Like what Mahua Paul, wanted to understand, from her research. I mean, she wants to understand that how teachers, professional development, has got, classroom practices. What are the various, classroom practices that teacher adopt? And these practices or these methodology, how would that help the outcome of students? For example, say Mahua wants to understand research practice from the faculty or the teacher in terms of, say, storytelling. I'm just giving an variable. The variable, the independent variable is called as storytelling, and the dependent variable is the student's outcome. outcome in terms of quality, outcomes in terms of efficiency, outcomes in terms of effectiveness, and outcome in terms of impact. The storytelling impact on the quality outcome of the students, efficiency outcome of the students, effectiveness outcome of the students, and impact on their scorings, on their academic scholastic achievement. This is just for an example out there. So you have this research design, and when you go to pilot study, what pilot study would be helping you is it refines your question. Okay, you have say 10 questions to be asked for a faculty as far as storytelling and students outcome. Mahua Paul wants to understand this. An hypothetical example, she wants to understand students outcome and classroom practice by faculty in terms of say storytelling, or in terms of say project based learning, or in terms of say class size and outcome, or in terms of the impact of differentiated instructions. These are few examples where faculties keep using this for the outcome. So pilot study would help you to refine question and test your data collection instrument for better accuracy. If you have say 10 questions formed, pilot study would help you what should be the sequence of the question. First thing, it would help you the quality of the questions, the sequence of the questions, and whether certain questions should be open-ended questions or they should be closed ended questions. Okay, so why pilot study is all these are answered. Okay, and Mahua would go with only say 10 faculties or 10 teachers and wish to understand this, because her actual study would be say again 200 teachers across the school. So precaution that pilot study would help you to refine your research design, help you to refine your questions, help you to refine your research question, research objectives, your hypothesis, and your data collection instruments for better accuracy. Okay, yeah, quality, efficiency, effectiveness and the outcome are very critical and very important in any of the study, and your pilot study would be helping that. The third aspect is identifying potential issues. Pilot study reveals problems in study design and data collection logistics earlier on. Like I was just giving an example of how Clayton wants to look at, the educational psychology wants to look at the social media influence or the impact or the effect on students understanding the social media. So here pilot study would reveal what would be the potential study design. Okay, and whom I need to pick, which level of students I need to pick. Is it 8th standard, 9th standard, 10th standard, 7th standard, 6th standard? And is this an appropriate study? Okay, can I do a study of social media influence on psychological behavior, behavioral change, behavioral aspect of the students in any of the school? Is this a right study doing at 5th level or 6th level or 7th level? That question would be answered when you go to a pilot study. Pilot study would help you also the relevance of your picking of the samples. Okay, what level of school students I need to pick if my study is to deal with this, because I wish to understand the psychological behavior or the psychological aspect of the students out there. It also helps you to understand the data collection logistics. Okay, yeah, fine. Pilot study would be helping you to understand what are the various challenges when you go for data collection in terms of time, in terms of feasibility, in terms of cost, in terms of interaction, with the teachers or with the students or with anyone for that matter, as far as your research, design is concerned. The last one, obviously, is the support for the dissertation research. Pilot study provides a foundation for rigor and ensures the main study is well structured. When we say rigor, how intense or how deep I should have my interaction with the students, with the teachers, with the principal, with the head of a school. Rigor also tells you what would be the minimum time and what could be the maximum time that I can spend with one sample, that or one respondent, who is participating in my study. So rigor also talks about the relevance of your questions. Say there are 10 questions, what should be my time management for these 10 questions when I am interacting with my sample? The first question, what should be my time? Is it 4 minutes or 5 minutes or 2 minutes? Second, third, fourth, fifth. Likewise, if you have 10 questions, what should be my time management? The rigorous discussion, that I can have, with my samples, with my respondents when I'm collecting my actual data. So, what is pilot study? Pilot study is a miniature of a bigger study, that you wish to take, tomorrow, when you go for an actual data, and it addresses the 4 points, what we see, on the slide. The purpose of your study, the research design can be refined, the potential issues as far as data collection and your study design, and the rigor which addresses when you go for a actual study. So let me pause for 1 minute and wish Philip or Clinton or Mahu has one point on this, in case they have done a pilot study or they are planning to do a pilot study. What is that one thing that you wish to discuss with me, so that I can answer your actual data collection would be very smooth. And like I said, 4 things are very important, your quality, your efficiency, your effectiveness, and the impact, of your study can actually be addressed, through pilot study when you go for an actual, bigger, data collection and bigger study.
Okay. Well, thank you for the opportunity. During the qualitative modules for this program, I did conduct a study, which was a documentary analysis for qualitative study in regards to it was a sub-component to the larger study, which I intended to pursue as part of the dissertation phase. So essentially, I did conduct a documentary analysis, but now I'm moving towards a case study, which encompasses a greater aspect. I find it was very helpful. What I am looking at now is employing in the design both a deductive and an inductive approach within the qualitative study. And those are some lessons learned from the pilot which I conducted. I also was able to get a better appreciation of access to the source information I wanted as part of the study. So it really assisted in identifying those source material, and also the how in vivo can assist in furthering my qualitative coding as part of the analysis as well. So I guess my question is going to be primarily focused on melding the deductive and inductive process together within the case study context. Any recommendations in that approach? Essentially, my study is going to be on the Nova Scotia mass shooting, which occurred in Canada several years ago. And from my study, um, I actually developed two questions, which was I thought was refined, is how did leadership engagement, namely timing, method of engagement, and method of engagement influence the coordination and effectiveness of police operational response during the Nova Scotia mass shooting. And the second question was, how did police leadership impact responding officers and public confidence in police actions during the Nova Scotia mass shooting? So my challenge now, which I learned from the pilot study, is coding. Really appreciating the approach to be more thorough and I would say purposeful in my coding to create a more I would say quality product.
There are two or three things, if I could understand, your question, right? Yeah, nice that, you're doing a documentary, analysis and your samples. You also wish to understand the engagement way and, your pilot study helped you as far as, you're also looking at inductive and, deductive aspect, what should be included, what should not be included. And obviously, you thought that case study approach would be the best way because pilot study said that yeah, several of the other research approaches are there, but case study would be the best approach for you to understand the police, so to understand the law, engagement and the behavior. Now there are two things that you need to look at. One is when you when you go for an actual study, right? That is what the first point on the slide. You need to have an introductory note on your questionnaire, introductory note on your interview schedule, or introductory note on your instrument, uh, defining three things. One is, what is your purpose of your study, what is the relevance of your study, and what impact those responses from the law, I mean people, police, people are there. So these three things would help you to get a quality responses, a quality outcome from the respondents. I also heard that you have a questionnaire and you wish to use this questionnaire. When you want to do your study the through questionnaire, or you want to do study through case study, do remember one thing: case study doesn't have an hypothesis. So you should not go with an hypothesis if you want to wish to use a case study approach. Case study approach basically is content analysis. Okay, you can use three things in this when you go for an actual study. One is thematic analysis. Once you are having an interaction with your respondents, with your sample, what are the themes that are coming out from their responses, from their replies. So we call this as thematic analysis. Another second one is content analysis. Okay, when someone replies for your question, when someone replies for an interview, what is the content of their response which is coming out, which talks about the quality, like you also spoke about inductive and deductive. Okay, so you can always ask those inclusive questions and look at the content of the responses of the respondents. You can always deduct which is not relevant to your objectives, is not relevant to your research question. The third is for the nature of the study that you want to use, you want to have this type of exploratory or descriptive study. The third aspect is called as grounded theory. Grounded theory means what is that new theory, new approach, new framework, new model that I can develop out of this interaction with the police personnel, with the police community that you're going to do. So my suggestion is look at thematic analysis, look at content analysis, and look at grounded theory. I mean, if you could read a few literature, what that means, and how does this relate, the relevance, how does this relate for your study. I'm sure that you would have a very quality output as far as your study is concerned.
Thank you. And for clarity, the source. My intent is to triangulate with the source from the Nova Scotia Commission report. So I have the Commission report and also the transcript from the testimony within the Commission report, as well as the media report within a time-bound frame of the incident itself. And those are essentially the three sources for my triangulation within the context of the research.
Yeah, that is what I said is the transcripts, that you can find in the police station, which are recorded, and the report, that you're speaking about, and obviously the media that is been reporting. That is what I said, your thematic analysis, content analysis. I mean, what is the content in the report? What is the content in the media? What is it trying to say? About, police engagement or police functioning or police management or police administration, and obviously, the transcript report, that you're saying about. These three, will give you two ideas. One is your approach, when you go and meet your sample, what would be the best appropriate questions, that I have to ask, because the quality of the questions will decide the quality of the outcome. The appropriateness of the question decides the appropriate response. The validity of the questions depends on the relevance and the validity of the responses of the respondents. And these three, relevance, appropriateness, and validity, if you could address this, and your conclusions, your outcome, your impact would be very high. So your sources would be these, yeah, obviously. And you can also look at any of the personal diaries that you can have, in case they are maintained, personal writing, personal diary, any documents apart from this would help you to get a bigger picture about your research design, bigger picture about your research problem, or bigger picture about your research objectives. The challenge would be, what is the quality of the content the reports have got. That would be a challenge. I mean, is this report written by an experienced document officer, or is it written by say a junior or a medium or a senior officer who has generated this report? That
Right.
maturity of a person who has written that would decide the quality of the report. But you can always make your own judgment, you can always make your own analysis based on these three reports that you're mentioning.
Right. And also, for further to amplify the context, I'm an experienced critical incident commander. And I'm bringing that from my experience. There are definitely, from a initial scanning, there are definitely gaps in where this research can contribute to the greater capacity within the critical response field in regards to those criteria that's identified. Also, I have to ensure I take the step for trustworthiness and transparency in regards to my experience and the reflexology that's associated to it. And the commission report is a essentially a federal mandated research commission, which was created. So the credibility is there. The formal process of transcript from on the oath testimonies and input from the different um, the public as well as officers and responding agencies are well documented. So I have a sound, reliable sources to start. Um, and then I just have to build on that from the media
Absolutely.
perspective as well.
Yeah, the quality aspect is already taken, because you have all the stakeholders, who have done this report. It could be an agency, officer, public, testimonials are there. So the credibility would be very high. You can make your own judgment, on all
Yes.
these reports and have a different angle of understanding, these issues and challenges so that your conclusion, your data collection, your interaction, your outcome would be something different from what these reports would be telling.
Yes, yes, exactly. Because the report essentially is focused on, I would say, there are certain areas that did not scrutinize the decision making and the leadership and the timing. It was focused primarily on the overall impact, right? And I believe it provides a great source for further development within this field.
Obviously, let me take the second question, but let me spend just 1 minute. You should always have a strong assumption, on your research design. You should always have a strong assumption, before you go for a data collection. And, you can always have a strong assumption in spite of all this, trustworthiness, completeness, credibility, all those testimonials. Can I still find that minute or minor gap which becomes an opportunity for me to work on that should be a different angle for you for your study, Philip. Yeah.
Thank you.
Absolutely great. So let me go to the next slide. Why we conduct a pilot study, and obviously we were just discussing about it. Like testing your research instrument. Again, in case of Philip, who was saying that he has a questionnaire. For example, he has a questionnaire. He wanted to try to test it, but the pilot study helped him. Case study would be a very better way, or some other methodology would be a better way. So why we need to conduct pilot study is pilot study tests, surveys and interview guides for clarity, reliability and validity. When you go with 10 questions, you should be clear all these 10 questions are addressing my research objectives, my research purpose. The bigger picture, of your research, is addressed in pilot study, and you will have a clarity of why are you there? Okay, what is your purpose of having this research? That is what I was just telling Philip. When you do a questionnaire, your first para would be telling about why am I here, for your interaction. Now, that is called as clarity. Your research instrument should also address the reliability. Are my questions reliable and appropriate to be asked to that level of my respondents? It could be students, it could be children, it could be faculty, it could be police personnel, it could be anyone for that matter. Whoever is participating in your study, you should understand the reliability of this question. Like I said, when say Clinton wants to do this, just a hypothetical, question. When Clinton wants to do the social media on teenager, and when he wants to ask one particular question, right? Now he needs to understand, is this question a reliable question, that should be asked, to standard 7th, 8th, or 9th, right? So testing this research instrument, in pilot study would help, you to understand clarity, reliability, and validity. When we say validity, is this a valid question that, I have to ask to this level of, respondents? Right? Is this a valid, question, right? Say like Philip was saying, all these reports are very trustworthy, so I need not, worry about that. So when he goes, to have an interaction with the police personnel, right, he need not ask, again, this question of trustworthiness. He need not ask, this question of, credibility, right? Already, he's clear about, this credibility and trustworthiness, right? So when he's devising the question, he can always not focus on this. He may focus on some other question which gives him the maximum, responses, which helps him, for his, research, which we call it as validity. So testing your research instrument, identifying logistical challenges. Yeah, obviously, pilot study reveals, the recruitment and the data collection issues, helping to resolve, practical problems out there. It could be in terms of interaction, it could be in terms of time management, cost management, logistic, arrangements, because you have to take appointment. People are busy, in their work, busy in their assignments, so you have to take the appointment. If it is 30 minutes only, in 30 minutes, can I get the maximum, responses, maximum outcome, and maximum, replies, from my respondents? You can also refine your research design, like we just spoke about, a document, analysis that, Philip wanted to do, but he thought that, okay, let me go with the questionnaire, but it revealed that, case analysis, would be out there. So when you have a research design, you can always test this research design in pilot study, and you can always refine your research questions and hypotheses so that you have an accuracy. One thing, let me remind you, there are three important elements in your research design. The first element is your research questions. And do remember that if you have two research questions, you should have two research objectives. And when you have two research questions, two research objectives, you should have two research hypotheses. Right? You can't have a mismatch. Okay, because every research question would have one objective and one hypothesis, right? So in your research design, when you go to the pilot study, the clarity and the accuracy as far as your research questions and hypothesis, would be addressed, and you're very clear, about it. The last one is estimating resources and budget. Pilot study provides, your time, cost, and resources, that I require, for my effective, planning. So why you conduct a pilot study? These are the 4 pointers, why do we, conduct, pilot study. Let me, have an interaction with Mahua Paul, and Mahua Paul is a senior leader. She wants to look at some politics, that is what I heard about it. What is your research question, if at all you have designed, a research question, Mahua?
Okay, so I plan to do a mixed method study.
Yeah.
So I'll have quantitative as well as qualitative. So my 3 research questions that I have are, the first one is, so there is a research question and there is also a sub question which I have framed. So my research question is, to what extent does professional development enhance teachers' knowledge, skills, beliefs, and attitude related to the subject of the PD? So for example, if I'm doing a PD on, say, inquiry-based learning, so to what extent does that enhance knowledge about inquiry-based learning skills and beliefs about inquiry-based learning. My sub-question is, what forms of PD do teachers consider to be the most effective for implementing into classroom practice? Then I have the second research question, which is, to what extent do teachers implement the knowledge and skills learned in the PD into classroom practice? And my third question is, how does the implementation of the learning from the PD by the teacher impact students' learning outcomes? So I've started with the effectiveness on the teacher. Then how does that knowledge and skill impact classroom practice, and how the classroom practice then impacts students' learning? So
Very nice.
my question is that, yes, pilot study is very helpful. I have done it during my master's as well. When I did my thesis, it was on the impact of inclusion on students' outcome in classrooms. So
Right.
for qualitative, it's very useful, because then you can test the questions, you can test whether your questions are yielding the right kind of results that they should, whether the questions that you formulate are relevant, whether they are, what your intention is. Are you getting those in terms of what people are saying as responses? For my quantitative, like I use survey. In order to test the survey, I use Cronbach's alpha. I didn't really do a pilot study. So do you
Right.
suggest that for survey also a pilot study should be done?
Now, two things. Nice that you said, you already have three research questions, and um, you wanted to look at extent, you wanted to look at the form and the methodology, and you wanted to look at the impact and the outcome. And the broader picture, I'm looking at the broader
Right. Yeah.
picture out there. Yeah. Extent of professional development learning that the teachers have, and how that will help in their teaching style or methodology, and frameworks that they use. What you can do, Mahua, is in pilot study, you can look at the quality of professional development program. When we say quality, what is the content the professional development programs are trying to, implement? Are trying to give training for these teachers. When I say content, is it the methodology? Is it the teaching style? Is it the behavioral style? Is it the class management? Is it the outcome? Your independent variables should be very strong, because your dependent variables are impact and outcomes. So in pilot study, you could also look at the four independent variables that you can look at. It could be in terms of approach. It could be in terms of methodology. It could be in terms of management, or it could be in terms of any other. The first impression that what I'm getting when I listen to your research question. The last research question talks about impact and outcomes. Now, I'm just wanted to understand, when you say outcomes, outcomes are only in terms of the scholastic achievements, or the percentage, the pass, or the learning. What exactly is the outcome? Okay, I have taken this training in my professional development scheme, and as a teacher, I go in the class and wanted to understand, whether my teaching is very effective or no, before and after. Experimental
Yes.
and non-experimental, something like that. So outcome in terms of what is it you're trying to measure?
So I was trying to obviously look at learning, because I wish to do a pre-test and a post-test and see how it has actually. So we in our school we use student reflection. So I wanted to look at, kind of do a analysis of the reflections to see how has their level of understanding of a particular concept maybe has changed, has it been enhanced. So
Yeah.
that would be also, and like you said, I could also be looking at their attainment. So what was their kind of attainment before the implementation, what was the attainment after the implementation. So also comparing those two, maybe doing a t-test to find out the differences in the the results.
Yeah, in a student t-test, you can apply and try to look at pre and post. Okay, the effect of
Yes.
that. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, that kind. Now, nice. That is what reflections. You want to look at, and yeah, reflection is more of a qualitative, right? So
Yes.
yeah,
Yes.
qualitative is not quantitative. Sometimes the topic that the teacher is taking, my reflections are very high, my learning is very high, my interest is very high, my aptitude is very high. Maybe some topics, in spite
Yeah.
of the professor is coming there, the teacher is coming and and teaching very excellent topic or the concept, but sometimes students, yeah, this is an outcome, this is an outcome that you always can always have. Pre and post can be one, and reflection is absolutely a great way, because you can always make recommendations on the best possible effective reflections that we can develop in students based on this. Absolutely.
Thank you.
Yeah, absolutely great. Nice. So let me go to the next slide so that I can have some discussion with Clinton. If he has got something on that as far as pilot study is concerned. Yeah, pilot study would also help you, to look at design, help you to look at implementation in terms of sampling strategy. Right. Yes. It determines, participant selection. I mean, I have always believed one thing in my research journey. Your quality output depends on who is participating in my study. Right. What is the maturity level? What is the background, of the participant, who is participating in my study? That will influence, or that will have a reflect or a correlation. Let me put a statistical term called as correlation. That will have a correlation on the outcome of the response, or the outcome of your conclusion. So designing the pilot study, or your pilot study, would help you to understand, how do I select, whom do I select, and why do I select this participant, and sample size to effectively test study procedures in the pilot study. I'll just give an example which happened in one of our research student who was making a presentation on the effect of AI, on learning. This was the topic. This is the topic, and this researchers was making a presentation, and after the presentation, I asked him, how did you select your sample? Which was your institute, which included, as part of your, sampling? He gave two answers. One is, he picked, say, 200 institutes and sent a formal permission letter and a participation letter. After, say, 15 days or 20 days, he took all those institute who responded to him, and went to those institutes and talked to the students the impact of AI on their learning, and he collected the data. I said, did you do a pilot study? He said, no sir, I didn't do a pilot study, I did an actual study. I said, had you done a pilot study, you would have not had two errors that you are now making, or you are now presenting. The first error is, you can't take whoever have responded for your email that they want to participate, because before understanding AI influence on students' outcome, you need to first understand, is there a course called as AI in their program? If there is a course in the AI in their program, then they would have had a certain level of maturity as far as what is AI and how it is affecting the students' outcome. If they don't have a course, how are they appropriate sample for your study? right? So the point what I'm trying to say here is the pilot study would help you, to address, your participant selection. You can't take everyone, and, say that, okay, participate, in my study. You only have to take those who come from that background, right? And the sample size. So I asked him, what was your sample size? He said, I went in the class, I said what is my objective, what is the purpose of the study, and I distributed the questionnaires to all the students, and gave some time for them, say 30 minutes or 40 minutes. They went through the questionnaire, and they replied and they responded. I said, how much was your sample? He said, whoever, the questionnaire was given, and whoever, replied with the questionnaire, they are the samples. I mean, this is completely unscientific, right? Had he had a pilot study, he would have understood whom I have to include, and obviously who would have understood, what would be my sample size. Data collection methods. Obviously, now Mahua was trying to say that I wish to, have a survey. I wish to also look at, some other method, that, I can adopt, as far as my, study is concerned. Yes, pilot study would help you, to look at, can I go with survey? It would help you to look at, can I go with any of the other methodology? It could be interview, it could be observation, it could be focused group, discussion, or what Mahua was saying, that she used a mixed methodology. She also wanted to have a survey through qualitative way, talk to one interview, and the same time quantitative way by and giving the questionnaires to the people out there, PD teachers, and try to do this. So in the pilot study, you'll always have a clarity whether survey should be good, or focused group discussion, or case study analysis, or one-to-one discussion, or group-to-group discussion, or one-to-group discussion. Your pilot study also would try to address as far as interview is concerned. Should I really have an interview? Should I really have one-to-one discussion? Mind me, if you want to have one-to-one discussion, obviously you know that you can't have a closed-ended questions, whereas you should have an open-ended questions. So when you say, you want to have an open-ended question, obviously the challenge is time and resources. So pilot study would helping you to structure, all this, when you go for an actual study. Instrument testing, right? Yeah, clarity, and the questions, that elicit the intended responses from the participant, which we call it as validity and reliability. Okay, the validity and reliability test of your instrument would understand the depth of interaction that I have to do when I go for an actual study, the depth and the width that I have to go for an actual study. And the last one, obviously, we spoke about, the logistic planning. It could be in scheduling, it could be in location, technology. I'm sure that, when you want to collect data, the first Monday and the last Friday, or the Monday and the Fridays are always not proper, because people have just come to the school, for teaching on Monday after having a weekend of Saturday and Sunday, and Friday usually, they intend to, pack up and be, in the mood of their weekend. So you want to have a quality an outcome, you want to have a quality response, you want to have a quality output. Usually, and not necessarily, but usually, data collection on Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday would be better. I mean, you'll not have an ideal day, but I'm just trying to tell the quality of the response, the quality of the interview, the quality of your outcomes, would be usually on, Tuesday, Wednesday, and Thursday, and the highest engagement from the teachers and the students, so that influences, say tomorrow you want to run one ANOVA test, you want to run a factor analysis, you want to run a regression analysis, or you want to run a panel data model. That's a multi, responses, that you want to do, or descriptive analysis, correlation analysis, so all this, lesser the error, if you have appropriate, time and appropriate day that, you have fixed, in having an interaction, with the respondents. Obviously, your time and the responses depends on the respondents' time, but try to see, logistic plannings are this, when you do a pilot study. So Clinton, you have any point on that? You did your pilot study in case, international school education. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. I guess maybe just for your thinking for now is my question would be, how do we report on the pilot study once we move forward with the full thesis and dissertation? So obviously, I'm assuming it becomes part of the final report, final part of the data methodology. So maybe you can talk us through that. What does it look like? How deeply do we have to report on the pilot study? And then I can probably just give you a brief overview of what I'm intending to study.
Now, what you should do is, when you start writing your chapter, called as methodology, when you start writing, saying that what was my framework of doing my research. Now, pilot study, you have to mention that, in your report that, for before I went for an actual study, I did, a pilot study, and pilot study helped me in 4-5 areas. And you can always see, what are these, 4-5 areas of, what, pilot study did. It could be in terms of refining your questionnaire. It could be in terms of refining your statistical approach that you have planned, refining in terms of your sampling, that you wanted to look at, like, what Philip was saying, he wanted to look at document analysis and all that. Then he wanted to look at, case, analysis. So if you ask me, pilot study has to be mentioned in your actual study, maybe half page or 1 page. And when you say the title called as pilot study, you should also mention why you did this pilot study. You wanted to test your instrument, you wanted to test your validity of your questionnaire, you wanted to test the appropriateness of the questionnaire, you wanted to test your relevance, of your questionnaire, or the relevance of having a survey, interview, or observation, method. All those, clarity, pilot study gave you a clarity, and you have to come out with saying that what was that clarity which helped you, in your actual study or the final study, data collection. Right. So in the report, you need to write what was the relevance of pilot study and what was the outcome of pilot study, which refined, your actual study, that you went for. So you need to, mention, your pilot study out there. And you should also mention, how, your pilot study helped in improving the quality of your approach, quality of your time, quality of your question. Pilot study also helped you to redefine the sequence of the questions. Obviously, that, one question logically should, lead to another question and another question and the chain of, questions. So in pilot study, you had a clarity of what should be the first question, second, third, fourth, and all that. And obviously, pilot study would also help you in the impact, that when you want to have a survey or interview or observation method, or, mixed, method, or focused group discussion, or any of those, methodology, that you want to have. So these are the few, pointers, that you need to, mention, in your, pilot study. What are the advantages of your pilot study?
And I'm guessing you don't need to only do one pilot study. You could probably do 1 or 2 or 3 if needed.
You can do 2 pilot study in case for example, you have a mixed method of data collection, for example, and you also want to have an interview of a few teachers or few students. You also want to distribute in a questionnaire. So in pilot study, don't mix these two. Do separately so that you will get a complete picture of, should I go with, mixed method, or should I go with one method, or two methods. So doing two pilot study is good. And say in case you want to have a comparison between, say, schools situated in city and schools situated in suburban, or schools situated in village. So doing one or two pilot study will get you a clarity on the depth of the questions that I have to ask for the students or the teachers if they're there in the city, and the depth and the intensity of the questions that I have to ask if the schools are there in rural areas or suburbans out there. Because I'm sure that the hypothesis is that urban students, or students who are there in metro would understand some terminology that you want to include in the questions, whereas students who don't have that opportunity would be there in rural area, would little understand. I don't say they don't understand, but they would little understand the meanings of what is that you want to ask. So in pilot study, you can always have an average words or average statements that you can use, so that you can get the maximum out of them when you have an interaction with them, so that the balancing happens. Because your understanding of a terminology should also be understood with everyone who is participating, so that the quality meaning out questions come out, the responses. So two pilot studies, in case you have a comparison study that you want to do. So two pilot studies are always better, so that it refines your questionnaire, it refines your approach, it refines your interview schedule, it refines your other aspects of your interview instrument, or your data collection instrument.
Okay, great.
Thank you, client, for that nice question that you asked. Obviously, ethical considerations. Yeah, when you do your actual study, you need to have an informed consent. A researcher must ensure participants understand the study purpose. That is what I was trying to tell Clinton. That, I mean, understanding the purpose. I mean, this is a hypothesis. Understanding the purpose of students who are into good skills, or who are into average schools, or who are into little below average school would be something different, right? So you need to have this ethical consideration, and you need to always tell what is your purpose of the study, what right you have to have an interaction with them, and what would be the potential risk through an informed consent. Second thing, obviously, confidentiality and data protection. Some call it as data, some call it as data. Okay, any of these two terminologies that you can use. So you always have to tell the participants, the school, the teacher, the leadership, the faculty, the confidentiality that you would be maintaining as far as data protection measures are concerned, safeguarding participants' information during your data collection and after the study also. Okay, when this trustworthiness, like what Philip was saying about trustworthiness, if you develop this trustworthiness around the participants as far as the confidentiality and their personal data and professional data and the replies that they have given for your questionnaire, I'm sure that you would get the quality outcome. And you need to obtain an institutional review board approval. So before going to an actual study, you can also tell them to your institutional review board what was the advantage of pilot study, what I wanted to ask, what I have refined, what I have added, what I have deleted, what I have restructured, what I have rewrote as far as my questionnaire is concerned. So obtaining institutional review board approval is not necessary, but I'm sure that it is necessary because of potential risk that is involved. But maybe required. Okay, so we must ensure ethical compliances and protects the human subject in your pilot study. I mean, obviously, you can always say that there is no harm, for the humans when they are participating in your, study. The last one, ethical consideration, is setting your ethical precedents. Addressing ethical issues thoroughly in the pilot study lays a foundation, strong foundation for the main study. It could be in terms of the intensity of the replies or the responses from the respondents. It could be in terms of the confidentiality, or it could be in terms of your questions that you want to ask, where they should not feel uncomfortable, they should not feel insecure, when you ask a question to them. So you need to always set this, ethical, precedent, before you go for an actual study. Can I ask all three, in case Philip, Clinton, and Mahua, when you went for your pilot study, did you really looked at this ethical consideration and addressed participants that your data would be protected, your information would be protected, your interaction would always be confidential and will only and only be used for research purpose? Was this a clarity done when you went for a pilot study?
Yes.
Very nice. Okay. And what was the reaction, of these, respondents? Did they really looked at this as a challenge or a threat, or weakness, or a strong point?
Not really, because in our school we have a kind of a practice of doing action research. So people are used to that kind of a, it's a culture where we do research, action research all the time. So people are quite confident with, other people conducting research. But at the same time, it is important to let them know what their rights are, that their data is protected, that their names don't, especially if you are, asking sensitive questions related to
Yes.
students or to related to other teachers, then it is sensitive, and that's where the ethical consideration becomes very, very important, that you're protecting the identity of those people.
Is there a Mawa you faced? Okay, you try to understand 10 people. Possibly you might have, say, included 10 people for your pilot study. Is there someone who had a challenge in not participating in it? Something like that?
So I kind of first, within the school, I first asked people whether they would be willing to participate. So it was not like it was voluntary. So
Absolutely.
since it was voluntary, then people already knew that, and before I sent out the questionnaires, I explained what was the purpose, why I was doing it, and the participation was completely voluntary. So if they wish to participate, only then they should go ahead and answer the survey. So that was made very clear. So only the people who were willing to actually, answered. So I don't think there was an issue with answering certain questions, because it was very clear that anything they said would not be, revealed to the leadership, because that's something which people are really a little conscious about, that this is something which is their opinion, and that opinion should not be revealed to the leadership, because they feel that that might impact their relationship in school. So
Absolutely.
that was something which I had to really take into consideration.
One last question, right? Say you had a nature of the questions. I'm not sure that what you would have asked. How was the engagement of, in case both the sex were involved, in boys and girls, or women and man? Whose intents of engagement in answering was more or less?
So I had done a focus group with middle leaders. And it was very interesting, because I saw that sometimes in focus groups, what happens is, somebody needs to take the lead.
Yeah.
And then there are some people who kind of echo what others are saying. So that's, again, I feel that's a challenge, because they are not probably expressing their own opinions, but they are mirroring what other people are saying. So
Yes.
that sometimes can be a challenge in a focus group specifically. If it's one-to-one, obviously, then it's just that person's opinion. But in a focus group, it becomes difficult to get each one's opinion separately becomes a challenge sometimes.
You don't get a diverse, opinion and diverse, talks.
Some people who are, confident and bold, they do give that opinion, but there are some who may be a little kind of reticent and they don't want to really go against what other people are saying. So they try to, say the similar things what others have said.
Absolutely great. So nice, V. And obviously, I'm sorry. Data collection and management, selecting data collection tools. We discussed about that. Your pilot study would really help you to look at, your survey platform and qualitative and quantitative analysis and the softwares, that you want to use. Documentation and field notes. I'm sure that whenever you like what Mahua was looking at focus group discussions, you always have to have a lot of field notes, so that that comes handy when you start writing your discussion conclusion and suggestions in your dissertation or the yeah, obviously, prepare to address some technical problems and participants, non-compliances to maintain smooth data collection. There could be some, but in this case, what we discussed is everyone was willing to participate there. But still, nevertheless, if you have any troubleshooting challenges out there in terms of data management practices, organized backups and all that, that all helps you, when you go, as far as, your pilot study is concerned. I'm sorry. Focus on the patterns and the issues, evaluating data collection tools, common data issues in terms of consistency, in terms of patterns, in terms of missing data and unexpected, participants' behavior during the analysis. And obviously, like we spoke, that a pilot study would help you, to look at, your research design, refining your instrument, the procedure, how do I really start? Where do I start? Why do I really, like I said, Tuesday, Wednesday, and Thursdays are always better. That's an assumption and hypothesis. It need not be, but you really want to look at quality interaction with the people. So I'm sure that Tuesday, Wednesday. So these are the few advantages in analyzing your pilot data before you go for your actual study. Yeah, assessing study effectiveness, the impact, what your study would be doing in an actual study, your pilot study impact would give a relevance, to your actual study impact. Okay, so evaluate what worked well, what requires improvement in sampling and data collection method, incorporating your sample or the respondents' feedback in terms of ethical concerns and study design and conduct. Obviously, refining your research design. I'm sure that your questionnaire and your data collection procedure, all would be an advantage, for your actual study, where your pilot study, would be helping you and supporting. We also spoke about, survey instrument, interview protocols, and benefits and, challenges. Okay, so pilot study is obviously helps you in all these things. It could be in terms of your methodology, the purpose, design, the procedure, and the findings in dissertation. It could be in terms of your discussion. What is the learning that you had through your pilot study. That is what I said. When client 10 was trying to ask, should we really report this in an actual study in the methodology chapter? Yes. You need to mention that in your methodology chapter, what were those 4 or 5 things learning that happened in the pilot study, which benefited you when you went for your actual study. So obviously, ethical considerations, you need to always have participants buy-in in your study, so that the quality of the responses would be very high. The rigor, the methodological rigor, and the clear research rational, the purpose, why is that you're there as far as your study. Obviously, the last slide is looking at transitioning to the full study. Your all protocols, all frameworks, all models, in terms of the pilot study findings and the instruments, can always have clarity and feasibility, relevance. When you go for an actual study, it talks about quality, efficiency, effectiveness, and the impact that your study would be doing. Yeah, sample, it prepares you what should be the sample. It prepares you who should be the sample, and prepares you why those people have to be my sampling for my actual study. A confidence in your study design. You would have a confidence that your research instrument, your mixed method, your thematical analysis, your content analysis, your grounded theory, or also it could be in terms of your statistical approach, like should I go into correlation, should I go into factor analysis, should I go into regression analysis, how do I have an ANOVA, how do I have a panel data, all these statistical analysis that you test in pilot study would help you to take it to the actual study. So this is about the advantages why you need to have pilot study, and what are the advantages, what are the challenges. Obviously you all have done it, but still nevertheless pilot study, like Clinton asked a very good question, should we have 1 or 2 pilot study? I'm sure that it depends on what is your research design. Like I said, if you're doing it in rural area and urban area and semi-urban area and in metros, obviously you need to test your different geographical sector when you're doing your pilot study, because the same meaning of the question would be understood differently by different people based on their maturity and based on their understanding of the terminology out there, right? So that's the way how do we look at as far as pilot study is concerned. So you have any last minute? Go ahead.
I just wanted to say thank you. I guess, in terms of procedure, and how much time would you dedicate to actually analyzing your pilot study? So, I mean, you could probably spend 6 months to 12 months doing a pilot study, just the analysis, but that would be a real waste of time when you have a more important, full study to do. So what would you suggest just in terms of time frames? How deeply do you dive into the data? Do you sort of just do it at a surface level? Practically, what would you suggest?
Yeah, Clinton, there are 2 things here. One is, before you again go for a pilot study, if you would have a rough estimation of how much that you want to have sample in actual study. Okay, that rough, I'm saying roughly, if you feel that you want to include 200 students or 200 faculties or teacher, for example, a number called as 200, I'm sure that in your pilot study you can take 20, and to have this 20 you can spend some say 20 days, and whatever the responses come out there, you can take next 10 or 15 days. So if you really ask me for 200 the actual samples, 20 to say 25 to 30 days would be more enough for a pilot study. You need not have months together doing a pilot study. Pilot study is basically to test your water, just to test your water, what is the quality, depth, and the wideness of the water. And I'm sure that it can take say 20 days or say 30, max 30 days. You can always close it and take next 10 days to completely refine your questionnaire, or completely refine your methodology based on the pilot study, and you can go for actual study.
One question, can you the data used within the pilot study, can it be included within the study? Your
No.
final product?
Yeah. I mean, no. Pilot study, for example, Philip, in case you have taken, say, an organization called as X, for example, an organization called as X, and in this X, if you have taken A, B, C, D, E as samples as a pilot study, now don't again repeat X and A, B, C, D for your actual study.
Okay, thank you. Because I did the documentary analysis because it I intend to exclude that one transcript from my study.
That is what I said. Just exclude it.
Okay,
That
so
is
I just wanted to confirm
yes.
that aspect.
No, because two things. One is it doesn't give that quality responses. You're just trying to understand the relevance of your approach, not the quality of your approach.
Right.
Okay. Yeah.
Okay, great. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much. I'm sure that the time is up, and it was really great, to have an interaction with you all. And in case you wish to have further interaction, I'm sure that through your nodal center, through your agency, we can always be in touch. Otherwise, you can Google and say Dr. Bagali. You will get my LinkedIn profile out there. We can always connect, on the LinkedIn profile.
Thank you very much, Dr. Bagali.
Thank you,
Thank you.
Moa. It was really nice to understand your approach as far as your
Thank you.
research is concerned.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, and good night.
Good night.
Bye.